On today's show, we are breaking down the Crazy 88 scene from Kill Bill. This is, I believe, scene 94 on Watch Mojo's 100 greatest scenes of all time. And of course, Tarantino was going to show up on this. I'm sure this is not the only time he shows up on this list. And we have to break down the way that Tarantino shoots films because he's one of the most respected directors in Hollywood. So, by the way, I can't show the entire scene. I've been getting a lot of copyright strikes when we watch an entire scene. So I'm just going to show the parts that I've picked out 7 different things that I think are pretty amazing here. Plus some things that I think you could argue maybe don't work as well. And we'll talk about all of those in the context of studying this scene. But the first thing I want to show, and it's one of the coolest things I think about this particular scene, is Tarantino never just shows you only the action. And I think this is a really important point when you're making a film. It's not just about the action, it's also about the reaction of the character to what's going on around them. If you just have an action sequence and you don't really get much reaction from the people in the sequence, then it's very difficult to be drawn into that scene in such a way that makes it more tense, that increases the stakes. In order to increase the stakes, in order to make it more tense, you really have to show the reaction of the characters in the scene. And I think Tarantino does that really well. So let's take a look at that to start out with. It's the action of the scene, but then also the reaction of the main character in the scene.
Silly rabbit. Tricks are for kids.
So notice we start out with the close-ups, and it's this character looking up at this character, and they are at odds with one another, right? This character actually wants to destroy the other character. And then there's action. Then we just go straight into the action, where we're running down the hallway with this guy. Yeah! Then reactions, right? Like, so then he comes running in. Really a strong zoom in to his face so that we see that he is, angry. And then we get all of her reactions to all of these people running into the scene. So if you don't remember this scene, I should leave a link for it down below. But this is the Crazy 88 scene where the bride fights the Crazy 88 from Kill Bill Volume 1. And she's tracking every single person that comes into this room with her eyes. And it's really important because throughout the entire scene, she's reacting to what's happening around her. She has a goal. She wants to get to the other person. She's then attacking these people so that she can achieve her goal. But as that's happening, we still get a bunch of close-ups of the bride to reveal what her emotional state is in. And it does change from time to time. Her emotional state does change from time to time in this scene. So the number one thing we learned from this Tarantino scene, the Crazy 88 fight scene, is that there's a ton of action, but we break that action to showcase emotion on the characters' faces. So, for example, if it's one of the other characters who she just stabbed or something, right? Like, we're seeing the look of horror on their face. When she gets hit by something, we're seeing her reaction of like, oh, I've got to be more careful because there's 88 of these guys that I'm trying to fight. There might be a couple girls in there too, or I should say, ladies. So the other thing I want to talk about is camera movement. And there's this one shot. There's 2 shots in a row that are absolutely amazing for camera movement. And I cannot even imagine what it was like to shoot this scene from a choreography and camera choreography. I want to talk about that a little bit later too. But the camera movement itself is just insane. So I'm going to fast forward here to right about here. The first thing, okay, another reaction shot, by the way. So another reaction shot of what's going on. Now, the first thing I like about this shot, what we're going to watch is the camera's going to move along one of the guy's samurai swords. It's sheathed, so it doesn't look like a sword right now. It's going to follow it up all the way. So we're also following a line, which is also aesthetically pleasing. So check this out. So the camera follows the line of that weapon and then we get a close-up of his face. And we've been getting close-ups of this guy the entire time because obviously he's like the leader or the captain of this whole bunch or whatever. So notice that camera movement. That camera movement is really interesting. We start with a close on the weapon, and then we move up to his face. And it just gives us the impression that, one, this guy's a badass, right? And also it gives us the impression that the weaponry is tied to a person who has an objective and who has feelings and who has emotions. Now, this guy's playing this very emotionless, but it humanizes this person so that when they get hurt, we are like, oh my gosh, this person's getting hurt. So camera movement here is amazing. But the next portion of this is even, in my opinion, maybe even cooler. So watch this camera movement. She's surrounded now by the Crazy 88. And this camera movement's awesome. This is some of the coolest camera movement I've seen in a while. We have a similar shot as what I'm going to show you where it ends. And now I'm thinking like maybe this is a cool camera movement to draw from inspiration from. But check out how cool this is. Now that is nowhere near a simple camera movement, but this idea that we're seeing her face, we're seeing like her response to being surrounded by world-class fighters, and then we're gonna pull up to show the imminent danger that she's in. Now, I should note that one of my comments here about why this scene is so awesome is probably my number seven thing, because my number one was action plus character reaction. Number two was the camera movement, which we just saw 2 examples of. But you should go through this whole scene. There's multiple amazing camera movements in here. There's one camera movement that I could have sworn it was on a dolly. It was so smooth the way it came down, and then they just ran across it as if there was no dolly track there, which of course it could have been people pulling the dolly track out so that they could have gotten that shot, but it's just wild. And for those of you who don't know what dolly track is, if you want a really, really smooth shot, this is especially true of older films. We have, really sophisticated gimbals and things like that now. They had great gimbals back then too. But one of the ways you can get a great dolly shot is you put the camera on a set of tracks, and technically the camera is on top of I don't want to call it a vehicle, but it's on top of a dolly, and you have dolly track, and then you're like moving along like almost like a railroad track, right? And it's very, very smooth, which is why people use it. But I love this shot. I mean, we this camera movement, which is my number 2 thing. So action and character reaction, camera movement, and then the thing I was going on a tangent about was that my 7th thing is drawing inspiration from other films. There's a cool video on YouTube, you can search for it, about all of the other film references that Tarantino used when filming Kill Bill Volume 1. There's like 58 of them or something like that. You can look it up. I think it was a Variety video. And this is one of those things, right? He's referencing samurai movies, he's referencing westerns. He's just taking a lot of inspiration from other films, which is a great way to make films. If you say, okay, this other person did it and I loved it, so I'm going to go ahead and use it in my film, that's a brilliant way of actually adding things to film. The next thing I want to showcase is the framing that he uses. Talked about camera movement. His camera movement is very easy to understand. It's whenever the camera is moving, right? It could be panning when it moves this way, back and forth, or it could be tilting when it moves this way, back and forth. That's camera movement, very easy to understand that. Framing is what is captured on the screen. Whenever you see directors like do this kind of thing, they're trying to see what is the camera going to see, how is it going to be framed. And then I have 2 references to the framing, which I think are both awesome. One of them's coming up here in a minute, so let's go to this. Now, the reason why I like this framing, let's watch it first, and I'll explain why I like this so much.
If you have one of these, your home's ready.
So, so like I said, framing is what appears in the frame. Now, that right there is why I think that this framing is amazing. If you are in a movie theater, or if you have a really huge TV at home, her sword just took up the entire frame. It went from the left side of the frame to the right side of the frame. Her entire sword. And she's looking at the blade of it, right? So this is the idea that, and then this is a cool shot too. Actually, I didn't even bring this up in my video, but this idea that you would say like, well, what is this going to look like on this really big screen? And I want the sword to be going basically across the entire audience. I mean, that's a pretty awesome framing choice there. My other framing choice, we're going to fast forward here a little bit to my other framing choice, which was 534. Yeah. So this sequence, which again was inspired by another sequence, this framing right here, I think is pretty awesome. You have the fight taking place in the center of the frame. Now it's a little bit off-centered, but obviously, like during the choreography, it moves back and forth. But I just thought this was a really cool use. The next thing we're going to talk about is color. That's awesome, also really cool. But this idea that we would frame the room in this way and then see the silhouettes fighting in the room, I thought was really cool, especially since you have a reflective floor. So again, action and character reaction, camera movement, framing. Now the next one is color. So I'm going to go back to 130, and we're going to see this sequence play out. We go 130. It's right in here. So the first thing that happens here, and there's probably a reason why this goes into black and white, and it's likely because they were going to get an NC-17 rating or something like that from there being so much blood in the scene, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the color change here is really striking. My favorite color change I'm going to talk about in a minute, but this one's really cool too. So this happens just in a couple seconds here. So notice that she pulls the guy's eye out of his head, right? Which we're going to talk about that too. And then it switches to black and white as soon as she does that. Now, one of the cool things about this is notice some of the things that we've already talked about, right? We've talked about camera movement, and we've also talked about framing, and we've talked about the character reaction to the action. So her face right here is an amazing capture of her reacting to the action. Like, this shows that she's in control, that she's super badass, and that she can literally pluck someone's eye out of their face, right? Which is nuts. But the color change going from full color to black and white is really interesting. But look at how cool this color change is, which is maybe my favorite, is when it goes back. When it goes back to full color again. So we're going to start here and watch how brilliant this is. She just blinks her eyes and switches it back from black and white to color. Now, again, I don't know exactly why they went with black and white. They could have just chosen it for stylistic reasons, but I don't think so. I think it was probably because they were going to get it. I know Tarantino has said in interviews that he was going to get an NC-17 rating, and he had to remove stuff from the movie. I think he also probably had to change it to black and white so you didn't see as much blood. But that color change is amazing, and it's in the context of the character reaction again, right? So the fact that she's blinking and it changes the whole vibe is just such an interesting choice. So that was number 4, was color. The fifth thing we can learn from this is the fight and camera choreography is insane. I don't have a specific reference for this. You can go back to any of these sequences and just see how insane the choreography is and how insane it has to be to pull it off correctly. And the number of times, I don't know how many times they did this. I don't know how long it took them to film this. I was looking for some behind the scenes content so I can get some of that information, and I just couldn't find it. I couldn't find it very quickly. So if you find a video where it has some of that stuff, leave me a comment down below, because this specific scene and how this is all choreographed and how they fight through it is pretty insane. But this idea, and Guillermo del Toro was talking about this in an interview I was listening to with it was with the DGA. The DGA has a podcast called The Director's Cut, and I was listening to this podcast. It's from all the 2025 Oscar nominees, and they're all in a room talking. And Guillermo del Toro kept talking about how the camera is another character, and I think that is very much exemplified in a scene like this one, where it's a giant fight sequence and the camera is us, right? Like, we're watching. And so where are you going to put it? When you do a move in the fight, what does the camera choreography do? There's choreography that they're trying to accomplish on the fight side of it, but what is the camera doing to capture the best possible scene that it can capture, or capture the fight in the best possible way to capture it? That's pretty insane too. So we've got camera and action and character reaction, camera movement, framing, color, fight and camera choreography. All of these things are present in this scene, and they're all phenomenal. The two other things I mentioned one of them earlier. I mentioned my number 7 one earlier, but the other thing I wanted to bring up about this scene before we actually start to talk about some of the things that Tarantino does that sometimes take me out of the films is that this character is vulnerable throughout the film. And I think that this is a really interesting choice when it comes to filmmaking, because there's this tendency to be like, hey, let's have a badass scene. It's a badass fight sequence where the lead character beats everyone up, right? Yeah, cool. But think of how much more valuable the fight sequences are when it's like Indiana Jones and he's actually vulnerable and you actually are worried about him getting beat up. I feel like that's true in this scene as well, is that we have more empathy towards the lead character because she's not invincible. She's vulnerable. So the whole time we're watching this, it's like she's getting injured. You can see the blood all over her outfit. And there's this idea that if the character is vulnerable, I think it makes the fight sequence more interesting. If the character is invincible, to me, it makes the fight sequence a little less interesting. So those are my 7 things. All really cool things that we can learn from watching Tarantino. You know, the 7th thing was drawing inspiration from other films, which he does. You can watch the YouTube video I referenced earlier about that. This is obviously drawing reference to, in my opinion, from comic book and manga stuff. I mean, this fight sequence really feels like it came out of a manga. I don't know if it's manga or manga. You can decide in the comments. But the 2 things I would say could take you out of the experience of watching this sequence, takes me out of it a little bit, which is why I'm referencing it, is over the top and it is gratuitous. Now, that's specifically a choice that the director is making. Tarantino wants it to be that way. That's the whole point of the sequence. The point of the Crazy 88 sequence is that it is crazy over the top and it's ridiculous action. If you like that, fantastic. Like, that's great. He does make her vulnerable, which makes, which helps out. It helps our suspension of disbelief when we see a character experiencing emotion on screen like she does. And we can't say enough good things about Uma Thurman in this role. She's amazing. But when that happens, when you have a character who's vulnerable, it does draw us into the scene a little bit more. We were able to suspend our disbelief a little bit more, which I think is really good. So the fact that she's vulnerable in that scene is fantastic. But it is so over the top and gratuitous where people are losing limbs and there's blood just flying everywhere. It's intentional. It does work for this film, but I could see some people going like, okay, well, it's not, it's maybe not as cool as an action sequence that felt a little bit more realistic, or an action sequence that felt even more over the top and crazy, but we weren't supposed to feel as empathetic towards the characters or something, right? So I think there are some criticisms you could level at this particular action sequence, in this particular scene, but overall, this scene is phenomenal. So I mean, anything you're going to say that's negative is. And he intentionally was doing the things that I'm that I'm wondering if you should do, or maybe I'm wondering if I would do them. And I probably would not do them, but I'm not the same kind of filmmaker that Tarantino is. And I can learn a lot from watching his action and character reaction, his camera movement, his framing, the color that he's playing with. Very gorgeous. I mean, it's a very, very gorgeous scene. But the one thing I think that Tarantino teaches us more than anything, and it comes from his background. Because for those of you who don't know, Quentin Tarantino worked at a video store, right? And he's watched movies all the time. And one of the things that he does probably better than any other director that I've ever seen is that he draws inspiration from other great directors and great movie scenes that he has seen. And he tries to capture that on film himself. And it just makes for amazing films in that regard. So yeah, there you go. That was my reaction, my breaking down the Crazy 88 scene from Kill Bill Volume 1. Like I said, I can't show the whole scene because I keep getting copyright strikes when I do that. but just showcasing some specific stuff that happened in that scene and what I've learned from it. Hopefully you like that. Tune in for the next one where we'll talk about we'll break down another scene from Watch Mojo's top 100 scenes in film history. I'm just pulling from those. I think we're on 94, 95 right now. I can't remember which one that one was. And we're just going to keep working through it. And I'm positive that there's going to be another Tarantino scene on this list. So stay tuned for another Tarantino scene breakdown. Thanks for watching. Bye.